All right, hello, welcome back to Tech Teacher Support. I am Chris, and today we are building an app. And this is part 3 of Let's Build an App. And today we're going to keep going on our Color Mix app. You see in front of you what we're going to do today, and that's we're going to add our first interactive switch. We're going to create an action. If you're just joining us, this is again part 3. Parts 1 and 2 you can watch to catch up. We are following chapter 17 of the Intro to App Development with Swift book. So this is a free book made by Apple, and it takes you through learning Swift and building apps with it. This is our favorite app to build. This is chapter 17, and so you can download that book for free, and you can go to page 120 to catch up with us. Again, we are using Xcode 11, so let me pull that up right here. And again, this is where we left off doing some of our coding and building. And then we also have over here our iPad, and this is what we use to test and run and build our app. So let me pull up this screen right here so it's a little bit bigger, and let me go back to our book. And let's just talk real quick about what we did and where we're going. So we're building an app over here on the phone, and that is called the Color Mixer app. And so far we've added our box, and we built and run our app for the first time. That's where we left off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we can change the color of that box with a switch. And so you can see we're creating actions. And this is really cool because this is when you get to start interacting with your app. So let's dive right in. It says right here, in Xcode, open main.storyboard. So I'm going to go back over to Xcode here. And again, we're going to make sure Xcode's up and running, our color mix. And I'm going to zoom in for you. Over here on the side, we have our project navigator, and this is all of our files. You want to make sure you are on main.storyboard. And you should see the iPad or iPhone screen that you're working on right in front of you. We also have our assistant code editor up here. So this is where we are writing the code. And then over here a little further are the attributes. And we're going to get into that today as well. So it wants you to be in main.storyboard. Here we are. We have this blue square. We added that last time. That's our UI view. And let's go back to our book and see what they want us to do next. So we are going to add a switch, and we're going to find that switch in our object library, drag it onto our scene, and then it has some options here for us. So we'll come back here and look at those. All right, remember to add an object, we are going to use this plus button. So watch my mouse. I'm going to go up to the top and over, and you see this plus button up here, and you see it says library. And what we want to do is we want to click on that plus, and when we click on that plus, it brings up our objects. We're gonna do a search for switch, and there it is. We're gonna click and drag that, and we're gonna drag it over to our interface here. And as you can see, you get these guidelines to help you center that, either vertically or horizontally. I'm gonna do it right in the very center, and there's my switch. Let's zoom in and look at that. All right, and that should be familiar to you if you've used iOS. That is an on-off switch. It has 2 states, on or off. Now, the book is going to tell us that it wants this button to start out off. As you can see, it is starting out on, but you have control over that as the designer. So you can click on this, and over here to the right, again, my mouse is highlighting, you have these attributes, and you're going to want to make sure you're on the attribute tab. And so you see switch, and it has a bunch of options about the switch. So let's go back and make sure we're doing the right thing. So it says in the attributes inspector, set the value of the switch to off. All right. So let's go back here, make sure your switch is selected. And then we're going to go up here to state, and we're going to say that should be off. And if we look back, it instantly changes. Our button is now starting off. So when your app starts up for the first time, it's going to want all the switches to be in the off position, and then you can turn them on as you wish. All right. So we've added a switch, an on-off switch, and we've set it to off. So let's see what our next step is. Now it says open the assistant editor so that view controller is visible. You are going to control drag from your switch and choose action. All right, so if you just got done with part 2, you remember we control dragged from our box to make an outlet. Now we're going to do that to make an action. All right, so I'm going to zoom in. Let's look at this again. I'm going to click on my switch, and then I'm going to hold the control button down or the right click button, click on my switch and start to drag. And you should see this blue connection line. This is letting you know that you're connecting this switch over here to your code, and we'll put it right down here underneath our outlet. All right, now there are a couple things it wants you to do when you get this window here. So you're creating an action, right, in the view controller. What is the name of this action? Well, the book tells us what it wants us to name that action, and it is going to be called switch changed, and it is a UI switch. All right, switch changed. So let's go back. We're going to name this switch, and then remember capital C, change, and that's called camel case. When you have 2 words, you capitalize that first letter of each word there. The type it set is a UI switch, just letting it know that that's a on-off switch. And then value changed, sender, keep it right there, hit connect. All right. And you see what just happened. It wrote some code for you. You said, hey, I want this switch to perform an action. And the computer said, cool, here's some code. Here's a function. When the switch is changed, send that information. Awesome. We are good. Let's go back to our book. All right. We named it. We told it was a switch. We clicked connect. And here is the code that popped up. So we are so far so good. Now, there is a additional step on here before we turn the page. And again, it's giving you a little bit of background information over what this code does. Again, it signals to Xcode that this is an action, and it is going to send the state of that switch. So right here, we're going to say color view background color equals red. And we want to do that within this function here. So essentially what we're saying is when we click that switch, the background color of our box should turn red. So let's type that code in. It says add the code inside the method. So again, the method is this function that we just wrote. So let's zoom in here. And you can see here we have our action, function switch changed, and then we have our brackets. So we're going to click inside of our brackets. I'm going to hit enter just to get a fresh line. I'm going to type this in. Color view dot background color equals red. Perfect. Nice work. Okay. So remember, you did that within the brackets of this switch changed function. All right, let's scoot our Xcode back down. Remember not to copy and paste. Make sure you type that in. If you have some errors, that's okay. You can hit delete and type it in again. Remember, there's always the undo button. Command Z will take you back a step. It's pretty universal on the Mac. So if you do something wrong and you feel like you just want to go back a step, you can always hit Command Z. All right. So let's go to our book. And we added that code. Color view background color is red. And now it's saying we want to build and run the app. When you turn the switch on, the view changes to red. Let's test our app. All right, let's make sure our iPad is fired up. We're going to go back to Xcode here. And remember, in the upper left, you have this play button. And that play button is going to build, compile, and then run your app so you can test it. And right here it's saying color mix. That's the app we're working on, and it's going to send it over here to my iPad. Again, if you don't have your own device connected, you can always send it to one of the simulators. But we love it when we connect it right to our device so we can test it on the fly. All right, so we're going to hit build and run. And again, up here at the top, it'll give you sort of its progress of what it's doing. Now let's go back to our iPad. Here's our iPad. This looks good. So there's the switch we just added. And if everything is right, when we click this switch, our black square that you can't see should turn red. Yes. All right. Congratulations. We just did some pretty important things there. We dragged in a switch, which is an interactive element. We created an action. So when that switch is clicked, an action happens. And then we wrote some code to say what that action was. So, congratulations. That is coming pretty far, believe it or not, to get to the point where you're interacting with your app and things are happening. So let's just turn this red square off. Oh, the red square didn't go away. I bet that's on purpose. We probably have to write some more code to say when we turn the switch off to go back to black. So let's look at our book. Let's see where we're at here. Oh, and it knew we were going to do that. It says when you turn it off, it stays red. What's going on? It's because the action method is called every time the value of the switch changes. So changing from on to off in its mind is the same as changing from off to on. So each time that switch changes, turn red. So it sees an on and an off as a change and changes it to red either way. We're going to change that though by making it either red or black. And we're going to use in our screen here what's called an if-else statement. And this is possible because, as you know, a switch, like a light switch, only has two states. It is either on or off. And that's called a Boolean property. And I'm going to zoom in here. It kind of tells you that, right? Think, for example, of a slider. A slider can have many different positions, but a switch can only be on or off. And so because of that, we can write what's called an if-else statement. And this is covered in the earlier chapters, but follow along because we can read this kind of like English and figure out what it's doing. So it's saying if sender, which is our button, that's what's sending the action, right? If our button is on, change the background to red. Else, change it to black. So you don't have to say if the button is off, change it to black, because it's either on or off. It only has two states, if, else. So what it's telling us is this is the code it wants us to put in our app and replace the code that just says turn red. All right. So this is an if-else statement. We're getting a little more complex with our code, but that's cool because we're just going to type this in and it'll be great. Okay. So it tells me right here where I say color view background color equals red. Now, we're going to delete that. I know we just typed it, but it's just kind of showing you that to be more efficient, sometimes you need to change your code. So let's get rid of that and let's type in here. And again, this is an if-else statement. So if sender dot is, remember capital O, on, we're going to put a bracket because here's what's going to happen if the sender is on. The color view background color equals red. All right. So if the button's on, it's going to do what's in the brackets. And you're going to go outside of that bracket. And again, I'm right here. We're going to drop down from that bracket and we're going to type in else. And this is what's going to happen if it's not on. Within these brackets, we're going to type color view dot background color equals dot black. All right, and there's its ending bracket right there. So essentially what we just did is said on is red, off is black. All right, so let's do a little cleanup here. Let's move our Xcode down. Let's pull our book back up on the screen. And essentially, before we go on, let's build and run. All right, so I'm going to sneak back a page. Let's build and run this and make sure that we go black, red, black, red. All right, so I'm going to go back to Xcode. I'm going to go up to my build and run up here because we changed a couple lines of code. So let's make sure that that runs. And this is always a good thing to do. Each time you change even a little bit of your app, build and run it. That way you don't make too many changes and then get an error and then have to go way, 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 way back, right? So I almost, after I change any code, I tend to build and run just to make sure it worked. So here we go, build and run. All right, let's look back over here to our iPad. And let's try this. We have red. We have black. Yes. All right, it worked. So again, we wrote the code. If the button is on, turn red. Else, turn black. You guys are awesome. We have an interactive button that turns our square on and off. That is really cool. So let's not stop there. We are going to add more buttons, more colors. All right, so this will be fun. And because you've already added one, it should just get easier, right? So let's go back to our book. And let's flip over. Okay, we are now on 17.3, which is page 124. And it looks like, according to our screen, we're going to add a couple more switches in here. So we're going to start right here on number 1. Open Xcode and go to main.storyboard. Select your switch. Type Command D to duplicate the switch. And then repeat that to add a third switch. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate our already existing switch. All right, so let's go back over here to Xcode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in to our interface here. And here's our switch. And it wants us to duplicate it. So again, on a Mac, Command D is duplicate. You can also go up, I believe, to the Edit menu. Yep. And you can go down here and you can click duplicate as well. And we're going to just do that. So we're going to say duplicate that switch. All right. Let's zoom in and look. And now it has created 2 switches. So let's move that one. And again, we can use those alignment guides to kind of move it, give it a little bit of breathing room there. All right. So we've done 1. Now we need to duplicate it 1 more time for a total of 3 switches. So let's click this switch. And again, I'm going to hold Command and hit D. And that'll make 1 more switch. And let's bring it down here. And there we go. We have our 1, 2, 3 switches. Okay. Good job. And the reason we duplicated those instead of just dragging out new switches, A, it's quicker, and B, since all those switches are going to essentially do the same thing, we can duplicate the state on off. We can duplicate some of the code and actions as well. So it's a little bit easier than creating 2 brand new switches. It's just saving you some time. So let's go back to our book. All right. And then it said, after you add your third switch, we are on number 5 here. Open the assistant editor to show viewcontroller.swift. And then we're going to create outlets. Red switch, green switch, blue switch. All right. Open the editor to show our code. Create 3 outlets. We got this. So again, it wants us to make sure we have this assistant code editor open. So you're going to want to make sure, again, if you don't have that, you can go up here to editor and you can click on assistant. Okay. And then it says what we need to do is we need to create 3 outlets. So again, this whole sort of fundamental of this lesson is actions and outlets. So the way you talk to the code and the way the code talks back to you. So 10 minutes ago, we made our first action, which is us turning the button on and off. But we also need the code to be able to tell if the buttons are on or off and make some decisions based on that. So we need these to also be outlets. All right. And this is going to be red, green, and blue, RGB. And it wants us to create an outlet for each one. So remember to do that. We're going to click on the switch. We're going to hold our control key or our right mouse button down. And we're going to click and we're going to drag that over here. All right. And remember, we are not making actions here. We are making outlets. So connection should say outlet. It wants a name. This very first one is our red capital S switch. It is a UI switch, correct? Connect. All right. And we can see real quick, there it is. It created red switch. So let's go down here and we're going to drag over, control drag over, and we'll just put that right under. And remember, this is an outlet, and we're going to call this green switch. And we're going to say connect. And then we got one more. This one here. Click on that. Hold control. Drag that over. I like to just keep these in order. Remember, this is an outlet. And we're going to call this BLUE capital W, blue switch. Connect. Okay. So now we have an outlet for each switch. We also have an outlet for our color view. So you should see 1, 2, 3, 4 outlets. And of course, we have our button switch action. Congratulations, you've made it very far. Let's go to the book and let's see what's next. Okay, so we just did number 6, control drag to create our outlets, and we gave them their name. Okay, now this is, again, it's going to tell you a little bit about these connections and actions. So here's what I want to show you. Over here in Xcode, a couple things. Looking at the code, you see this outlet, for example, has this little filled in circle. When I highlight the circle, it tells me what it's connected to. So that helps you sort of visually see what your code is connected to in your interface. Same thing if I go down here to blue switch and red switch, action, right? Again, the action, because we duplicated the button, applies to all three. So what it's saying is there's another place you can see that, and that is called the connections window. So follow my mouse. I'm going to go over here to the right, and then I'm going to go up. And you notice, this looks familiar, this is our attributes, but 2 spots over here is our connections inspector, okay? And if you click on one of your objects, it will show you the different connections it has. So these are the actions, and these are the outlets. So it's saying this switch is connected to the switch change action. So when it's turned on or off, there's an action. And it's also changed, or it's also connected to the outlet, letting it know whether the button is on or off. So what the book is trying to show you is that you can come in here, and if you have some problems, things aren't connected right, this will help you understand what is connected to what. All right. So that is just a little overview of that connections window. If you can imagine an app like Instagram or Facebook has a million different things to click and tap and slide, and it's important to keep track of all of those. So that's where that happens. Okay. What it's giving you here is a little bit of information about how all that works. So we're going to kind of skip that. And now right down in here, it says it's time to write some code. Now, let's highlight this for you. Oops. Let's highlight this for you here. Okay, so it says the action method is not the best place to update the color of the view. There's already some repeated code in the file. the color is set to black in view did load, and it's also set again when the switch is turned off. A better design is to create a single function that makes the correct color based on the state of the switch. So what it's telling you is something you're going to see a lot. It may be called refactoring. It may be calling be more efficient. But we're going to have the same line of code multiple times. It's telling us to sort of combine that into one line of code so we don't have to write it multiple times. All right. And so right here, it says, add the following code. This is page 127. Add the following code to the view controller class. Okay. And what we're going to add is this function called update color. And then we can call that update color function in different parts of our code and make the color update. So we need to write this code. And it says in the view controller class. Okay. Now let's talk about this code real quick and then we'll write it. What we're saying is set every button red, green, and blue. So here, let me highlight this for you. Let's go through. Our red variable set to 0. Green and blue set everything to 0. And then check the switches. Is the red switch on? Well, then add 100% red. Is the green switch on? Add 100% green. Is the blue switch on? Add 100% blue. And then this variable here, color. What should the color of the box be? It should be the red plus the green plus the blue. That will be the color. So we'll begin to see as we switch these switches on or off, we'll be able to create some different colors, and that's what's happening here. So let's write this code. Let me think of the best way to get this sort of on the screen. I bet we can do something like that. And then I bet we can do something like that. Let's see if we can't do that. It's going to work okay up until there. Okay. So over here, we are in our view controller code. And again, I'll highlight with my mouse, right? And I'm going to go right above this outlet. And I'm going to start typing in our new function. And again, we don't like to copy and paste. We like to type everything in. Even if you need to follow a screen, it helps you understand and just gets you in the muscle memory of understanding how this code goes in. So let's type FUNC, which is short for function. The name of our function is update, capital C, color, parentheses. All right. Now, what does this function do? So let's put a bracket in here and let's describe this function. We're going to make a variable red and we're going to set that CG float equals 0. All right. Now we're going to make a variable green CG float equals 0. Now, if you look at my screen, you'll notice it's starting to give me some errors. That's okay, because we're not completely done writing this code yet. Sometimes as you're writing your functions or your code, it's going to aggressively check your code and tell you, hey, you're missing something. Well, that's because you haven't finished typing it in yet, right? So don't worry about errors that show up in the middle of typing code unless they're bright, big red ones that say you've really messed something up. But for the most part, wait until you're done typing your code and then go back and see if there's any problems. All right, so don't fret that it's telling us that there's a few problems here because those will go away. So now we need to do our blue. Variable blue, CG float, set that to 0. Okay. Now, we're going to write our if statements. So it's going to check our buttons, see if they're on or off. All right, so if red switch, remember we named it red switch, is on, if the red switch is on, bracket, red equals 1, which is 100% red color, right? And we'll see that in our slider, it goes from 0 to 1. So 0.5 would be 50% red, 1 is 100% red. So if the red switch is on, set red to 100%. All right. And then we're going to make a bracket there. And then we're going to say if green switch dot is on, what should it do? If green switch is on, it should set green to 1. Perfect. Finally, if blue switch is on, what should we do? Easy. Make our bracket here. We're going to say blue equals 1. Awesome. So let's make sure this bracket ends there. This bracket ends there. That one ends there. That one ends there. And what I'm doing is I'm clicking on my brackets. You want to make sure that everything is within the bracket. And sometimes to check, you can click on the first bracket and see where its ending buddy is. Its ending buddy will light up in yellow. That's how you know that everything is okay there. So we are good. So let's double check this real quick. I'm going to do a little cleanup here. We're going to move this window back. Okay, and then we're going to go back to our book. And now we have one more part of code to write. This was a little long, so I couldn't do both screens at once. But now it's going to add all those colors together. And that's what's going to give us our final color here. So it's going to set let color. So essentially we're making a new variable called color. Let that equal the red plus the green plus the blue. And turn that into a color based on those settings. So let's type this in. We're going to go down here. We're going to say let color equal UI color. Let color equal space UI color. And then how do we get UI color? Well, we need to add these up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this code under here so we can read that. I'm going to move this up for us. And so move this up. Here we go. And here again is where we are. Let color equal UI color. So it's going to be red, colon, red, comma, green, colon, green, comma, blue, colon, blue, comma, and then our alpha channel, I spelled that wrong, alpha, colon, 1, parentheses. Okay. Under that, color view dot background color equals color. There we go. All right. So now let's look at this again real quick. We have our function update color. We're going to set all of the colors to 0, and then we're going to check the buttons, figure out which ones are on or off. Then we're going to add those up, and we're going to change the square and make it that color. All right. That is by far the most code we've had to write yet. Now take some time, double check. Again, look for reference over here. If you have any errors, if you just can't figure it out, you can always ask us on our Twitter. You can send us a screenshot of your code. Let us know what's happening. That's at TechTeacherSup on Twitter. Or you can comment in the video below, and we'll figure it out for you. We'll get there. Okay, so let's move on, because we are coming up to the end here. This is a pretty perfect place to stop. So we need to now tell our square to run that update color function. So we wrote that function, and now we need to put it into use. So it says to update the action method to call this new function, remove the code that was setting the color and replace it with a single line update color. Okay. So we're going to go back, and here's what it said. Remember right down here when we said when our switch is changed, make it red or black? Well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to say when our switch is changed, run our new function, update color. So if switch is on, update, color. All right, so what we did again is we deleted the red and black because it's no longer just red or black. Now we've added blue, green, red, right? And so we made a function called update color, and we're going to say whenever we click our button, run that function that we just wrote right up here. Okay, and we got one more step, and also right here, from view did load, remove the line that was setting the color and replace it with update color. So there's one more spot. Let's go back to our code here. We're going to go up to the top, and we're going to see right here, remember we said when our app loads, make that square black. Well, we don't need to do that anymore. What we're going to do is when our app loads, we're going to run our function here, and it's going to decide what color to be based on our switches. And we named that update color. Okay. So we just deleted 2 lines of code and added some new code in. All right. Update color. And then down here on our switch change, update color. So I'm guessing it's going to try to have us build and run this. Let's check this out. I'm going to go back to our book. Yep. Build and run your application. Change your switches. You'll see the colors mix. All right, moment of truth. Are we ready? We're going to go back to Xcode. Let's make sure our iPad is awake and ready to go. We're going to go up here to our play button. We're going to build and run. And let's see if we are successful. All right, let's go over to our iPad. Well, first sign that things are good is we have 3 buttons now instead of 1. That's a start. Let's try this first button here. Red, green, yellow, purple, blue. Okay, so that's blue, that's green, and that's red. What is all 3 of them? All 3 of them should be white. First one and last one, purple, blue and green, make kind of a teal, and then make kind of a yellow. Right on. So as you start mixing your buttons around, you should start mixing your colors. That is rad. Okay, so let's go back to our book here. Okay. 17.4 sliders. So this is where instead of being full red or no red, we're going to be able to change a little bit of red to a lot of bit of red with a slider. So this is pretty exciting. This is again more actions and outlets. We're going to get to that in part 4. This makes a good time to stop. It's been 40 minutes of straight coding and building. So here's where we're going to do. Let's pop this over here. Okay. So thank you for joining us for part 3 of Let's Build an App. You should have multiple buttons and the ability to click on and off your app and change your color around. Part 4 is coming next. We are going to do sliders. I want to split this up so you're not in front of the screen for hours at a time. So come back, join us for part 4. We're continuing building our color mix app. We're going to add in our sliders, and let me just pull this up right here. Again, you can come to our website. If you have any questions, you can also find us up here at Tech Teacher Sup. Leave a question, leave a comment. Let me know if you're having any problems and we'll figure it out. So congratulations, you're building an app. This is really exciting. I'll be back later with part 4. In the meantime, have a great day. Thank you for joining, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, peace.